Hey kids, it's Jurassic James, and on this Jurassic James Explains, we're looking at Nigersaurus. So, as the name you might imagine comes from, the Republic of Niger in Africa, basically it's from that region, with fossils remains were found in that region. And we only have two models of this, and actually it's ironic, they're the same color and model, but my experience with this animal, these figures at least, start in 2008 when I was at an honors conference. I was a college student at an honors conference in Nebraska. And I was like one of like 8 students who were sent to this thing. And I remember going to the gift shop in the museum on campus, and they had this toy. It's a 2008, essentially Nigersaurus, a bike safari. And I missed the paper on the animal. So it turns out an expedition between 1965 and 1972, the remains of Nigersaurus were collected, but they weren't described until 1975, which is not uncommon that people would go and dig, find a thing, take it a while to prep it, clean it, and then look at it and then write about it, basically. So that this isn't really unusual. But in 1999, that's when it was like officially like named, and it was Paul Sereno, and being the most famous paleontologist in the group, and others who came together and named it Nigersaurus after the region. And this guy is really, really interesting, the sauropod. So first of all, as far as its like family goes, it is a sauropod, long neck. It's like 30 feet long, which if you know long necks, that's not that big. Also, it's important from the early Cretaceous period, which is also fun because people associate sauropods with the Jurassic Age of giants, and of course in the Cretaceous as the southern giants of Africa, South America. This guy is from Africa, obviously, but the thing to point out is that its actual its family, the Rubichosaurids, and so here we have a Rubichosaurus itself. It is a sauropod that has these long neural spines in the back. But for the common viewer who's like not a sauropod expert, this is more Diplodocus. So it's closer to Diplodocus. So I told you in the previous videos, the Dinosaur 101 video, that in sauropods there are like two major groups. The Diplodocus group with these short arms and long legs, and the Brachiosaurus branch with the long arms and short legs, also called Macronaria. So Brachiosaurus, Camarasaurus, the Tyrannosaurus later on, those are in that group. So they kind of dominate the late Cretaceous period. The Brachiosaurus, Tyrannosaurus build, that form, is really successful in the southern hemisphere. But the Diplodocus forms have like their last hurrahs. These guys in like Amargasaurus, some of the most well known that branch. But and again, the model, I often have multiple figures, and often have, especially the older or the species that were found longer ago and have multiple figures. You can see the changes of them, like Ceratosaurus from the early to the modern. Nigersaurus was named in 1999. This first figure is in 2008. So there's very little room for modification, or they found it after that dinosaur renaissance. So we kind of see how they're built more likely. So it have the same design. This one here actually is from Collect A. Now usually Collect A has really small models. This is a 2009 model, and they usually have smaller models of like various species. They do have bigger ones too. And I really want to support that company. So that the idea, I just sometimes go on like eBay and just type in Collect A and just see what they have, right? So what's going on here is that same design. Now, the one thing about Nigersaurus that's like the most important, most observed, is that the animal has this really weird face. The mouth comes down like this, and then it's flat. And it's fun because when you read the papers, see the documentaries on it, they talk about it in a weird way. And it's often described, and follow me here, as, let's see, the hammerhead shark of sauropods. Now, one thing to point out, the hammerhead sharks do not have a continuous mouth across the entire top of their head. It's just right there, but they have teeth all the way across. It's often studied in comparison to Hadrosaurus, the duckbill dinosaurs. So here I have a Montasaurus, which themselves are called the cows of the Cretaceous period because they are low, flat-mouthed grazers, and this is a sauropod, a low, flat-mouthed grazer. That's something to point out. Now, my favorite descriptions of this animal, the ones that have stuck out to me the most and why I brought props today, are one, it was described as the Darth Vader, because his helmet has this like right here, wide and flat. Or for those of you who aren't Star Wars fans somehow, like the vacuum cleaners that are kind of wide, it's the same design. And I mean, it's not like sound science, but one thing I like to point out is when you see tools that look like prehistoric creatures, keep that in mind. When you're vacuuming with like this, it's the hose is here, the eyes would be there, right? And the mouth is very wide. This gives you a wider grasp of the cleaning material. Well, this sauropod is eating very wide and flat. So these, like I said, given what they found, the percentage of the skeleton, these models are really, really great. I mean, again, it's known for multiple skeletons. But the main thing to point out with the skull in particular is that Paul Sereno pointed out how it's almost like cardboard, because the skull has the most minimum bones in it, but it's strong. And it reminds me of like pterosaur bones, how the flying pterosaurs have these really thin bones, but they can still fly. Same thing here, the skull is as thin as it can be evolutionarily and still functions, kind of thing. Like, if you were any thinner, it would not do well. You can imagine in the diversity of genes and the offspring that some have had thinner features and they just didn't do well. Same thing here. So Nigersaurus is known for that. Now, where does he sit on the family tree of time? Well, very simply, early Cretaceous, North Africa. So who are his neighbors? Now, there is an iguanodont. There is no toy I'm aware of yet. That's often compared to the low grazing animal, but a more well-known relative, or not relative, fellow herbivore is Tyrannosaurus. And just like I have my big and small Nigersaurus, I have a big and small Tyrannosaurus. So these are, despite their cell, they are not Spinosaurs. People think they're Spinosaurs. These are actually initially thought to be iguanodonts. Tyrannosaurus is now thought to be it's a heterosaur form, so it's like somewhere between iguanodonts and heterosaurs. But the main thing is this big cell on its back, so these guys would have lived at the same time. A Spinosaurus had not evolved yet. It's the relative, Suchomimus, the Jurassic World version here, and then like the, I think, Safari, very well detailed version here. So that, it's like a Spinosaurus, but smaller, and the cell on its back is way smaller. It's like, the Spinosaurus has like 6 foot neural spines, those bumps in your back. This guy has smaller ones, like smaller, it's a dinosaur, but they're shorter than the Spinosaurus, right? So they thought to have a little bit of a cell in the back too in some scenarios. Also, a kid crowd favorite, Suchosaurus. So it's a giant crocodile morph, and I don't know what happened in the last like 8 years, but every kid knows Suchosaurus. Like, and the word Suchus means croc. So Postosuchus, Desmatosuchus, Mollusuchus, all these creatures you see in late Triassic, although this is Cretaceous, the Suchus means crocodile. So every kid knows this animal. I don't know what's going on now. Should be its own video, I know. But these 4 are animals that were at the exact same time, exact same place, environment. So something to point out. Now, point also that Tyrannosaurus lived into a little earlier, so they live with Spinosaurus too. But these guys were contemporary. So if you're doing your little Nigersaurus diorama, you want to find these particular species and put it in the same environment with it, if you're being very time sensitive. But in general, that's Nigersaurus in a nutshell. It's a really cool animal. I'm looking forward to seeing more studies. I do know Paul Sereno, I think Larry Whitmer of Whitmer Labs, he does a lot of like soft tissue scan studies and stuff, and they'll see where the, like when the animal's mouth is out, where the stress is, or where it can't take stress. Their jaws aren't necessarily weak, but the idea that they can't bite certain ways. And it's a really cool thing. I mean, look it up online. It's really interesting about their feeding methods. But that's Nigersaurus in a nutshell. I hope to find more models of it in the future. I'm really hoping that the Jurassic World line picks up one of these, because they'll be kind of like cartoony, but still, because we need more Nigersauruses. It's a really cool animal. That being said, thank you very much. I'll see you guys later.